Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. Today, we're going to go through my rookie rankings. Finished these up yesterday, and we're going to go through the top 40 of them. We're sticking with SuperFlex today. We've got some quarterbacks to talk about, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, of course. I mean, we're talking fantasy football essentially today. We're going through some rookie rankings as we help you guys during this rookie draft week. So go ahead, take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right. Welcome in, everyone. Good morning, Jason. Nice name. Good morning, Jason, on YouTube. Good morning, everyone tuning in on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. Good morning to you, Ryan, as well on YouTube. And good morning or afternoon or night to everyone listening on the podcast found in the description. So, guys, we're just going rookie rankings today. We could talk about the Travis Kelce extension. That's pretty cool, but it's rookie draft week, right? Like, that's all we care about. We want to talk rookies. We're going to keep talking rookies. And as mentioned at the top of the show, I finished up my rookie rankings yesterday, so I thought it'd be fun to talk about them. So I'm going to pull them up here. Again, these are SuperFlex rookie rankings. I know you can already tell by looking at this that something might be different than most. But I think when you look at this, especially in a SuperFlex draft, you've got to prioritize quarterback. And I know that Marvin Harrison Jr. is a stud. I've been saying it for a very long time. I'm a big old Marvin Harrison Jr. guy, but I have come around pretty well to these big three quarterbacks and their landing spots. Caleb Williams, of course, is going to be the 101 in our SuperFlex drafts pretty much across the board. And then it's really going to come down to team need. I do think like there might be some people out there who think I just don't need a quarterback. I want Marvin Harrison Jr. I'll get him at the 102. But I really do think that Drake May right now is my SuperFlex 102. I really like what the Patriots did in this draft. I like what they're doing with the coaching staff. Gerard Mayo seems to have these guys fired up and a new culture kind of forming in this. And then they draft two pretty solid wide receivers. You guys already know I'm a big fan of Javon Baker. And then they get Jalen Polk early as well, which should help tremendously. I think the wide receiver core ended up shaking out all right. And I think that Drake May has a lot of the intangibles to be a really good quarterback. I really was impressed after interviewing him. He just had this moxie and aura about him and this just a charisma, I guess you would say, that just made me feel like the Patriots really did get their guy. He was, super warm, this big ass smile on his face, answered questions very well. And we already know the stats, right? I mean, really good stats going into his last year at UNC. Before that, had a pretty good touchdown to interception ratio, has, of course, the wheels as well. He runs, he throws, he's got it all. And I think that Drake May got himself a really special landing spot in New England. And I do think that he's going to be pretty solid. I think that they got their guy. I just do. I know that we've been seeing some clips going around with his footwork being kind of messy, but he's still got everything done regardless of that poor footwork. I mean, he was electric in college. And so I'm going to put him over Jaden Daniels in my SuperFlex rankings. I am going to believe in the New England Patriots more than I'm going to believe in these Washington Commanders, because let's face it, Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury did lose their last jobs for a reason. But with that being said, solid landing spot, and the Commanders surrounded him with solid weapons, just as the Patriots did. Ultimately, the reason I'm putting Jaden Daniels behind Drake May is age. I think they are, basically closer than anything can get. And that's why I'm putting them above Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that both of these quarterbacks, these teams got their guy. I just am putting Drake May ahead of Jaden Daniels mostly because of age. Because when you look at the Commanders, it's another solid team. They already had Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, but then they get Luke McCaffrey in the third round and one of my favorite tight ends in this class, Ben Sinnott, in the second round, who I think is going to be pretty special. And they already had Zach Ertz, plus a decent offensive line. And they got Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler as well, a pass-catching running back and just a good bell cow running back to kind of take the load off Jaden Daniels if need be. So I like how this Washington Commanders offense shaped out. And Jaden Daniels, the Konami code running back in a SuperFlex league, I mean, you kind of got to go with that. I mean, we're talking about a Heisman winning quarterback here. And I just think in a SuperFlex league, you've got to take him over a wide receiver. I think you just have to. So I'm doing it. I'm staking my flag here and saying that Marvin Harrison Jr. needs to be 4th in SuperFlex rookie rankings. I think that you've got to go with Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels over Marvin Harrison Jr. Unless you've got like an insane QB room and you just want to go Marv. It is what it is. But I just think like we're going to be looking at this next year, and all 3 of these quarterbacks are going to be pretty high up in our dynasty rankings, and it's going to be hard to acquire them in trade. Then it's probably going to cost a Marvin Harrison Jr. asset plus to acquire any of these guys. So as you can see, after we get to Marvin Harrison Jr. at ranking number 4, this is a tier break. And you guys can see already that I'm going to continue my QB flag plant because I have Marvin Harrison Jr. at player number 4 in our Superflex, in my Superflex rookie rankings. And then I'm going JJ McCarthy after Marv. I really like the Minnesota landing spot. And of course, he's only 21 years old and just a good game managing quarterback. I'm not sure what the ceiling is here for JJ McCarthy in terms of being ever like a top 10 dynasty asset. But I think, again, he has a really, really solid floor, and especially is throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, and Jordan Addison. I think it's a pretty special target room, and JJ McCarthy is going to be able to excel in that offense. And so I'm going to take a chance on a JJ McCarthy before I take a chance on Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors in Superflex leagues. Like, you've just got to lock down your quarterback. And we'll talk a bit in a second. I do really like Odunze. I do really like him. But I just think that you've got to go quarterback over him. Again, a pretty solid season last year with Michigan, ends up winning the national championship, gets all this pre-draft hype, gets buzzed up, gets taken in the top 10. So I'm just going to, again, I think the quarterbacks are really important in this class, and I think that their draft capital is going to cement that. When you have 6 quarterbacks taken in the top 12, that proves that a bunch of NFL evaluators felt that these quarterbacks were going to be good too. So I'm just going to go with what the NFL tells us, and in Superflex drafts, lean into quarterback, which is what I'm doing after JJ McCarthy. I've got Bo Nix as player number 6 in my Superflex rankings because I also, again, like this landing spot. Like, I really loved all the landing spots for these quarterbacks. Like, it is very easy to paint a picture of success for any one of them. And I love that Bo Nix also gets to get paired with his favorite weapon from Oregon, Troy Franklin, who they drafted, 3rd round that they ended up getting him. I think that was nice. I think that that's going to help him feel a bit more comfortable. And I do believe that Sean Payton still has, good coaching capabilities. And I'm going to blame a lot of stuff on Russell Wilson. I think that a lot of what went wrong last year was Russell Wilson. I know he had some good games and kind of started doing better towards the end of the season. But I think that Bo Nix is going to be able to come in here. I think he's going to be able to run Sean Payton's offense more than Russell Wilson was. And I think he's going to enjoy throwing the ball to Troy Franklin, to Marvin Mims, to Cortland Sutton, and Javonte Williams, of course. Like, I just think it's, again, a really solid landing spot, and I think Bo Nix fits perfectly in it. We saw how smug Sean Payton was about being able to get him when they did. They're very excited about it, and I think that we have to be excited about it too. So yeah, those are kind of, I've got 5 quarterbacks inside the top 6 of my Superflex rookie rankings. I think you have to. I think you have to with that draft capital. In the landing spots, like, you can paint a really solid picture for all these guys to have some success. So let's go ahead and scroll down. And this is probably another area where people are going to be like, Jason, what are you doing? Oops, scrolled too far down there. Yeah, I'm going with Rome Odunze next. I am planting my flag on Rome Odunze over Malik Neighbors. And the main reason here is Neighbors rubbed me wrong when I interviewed him at the draft. Again, he still, of course, has that insanely high ceiling. I mean, the athleticism is undeniable when it comes to Malik Neighbors. But it's going to be very hard for me to bet on a wide receiver catching passes from Daniel Jones with basically no offensive line. I can't get excited about it. And then you also, all the stuff going into the draft about Malik Neighbors not wanting to play for the Giants, not wanting to play for Daniel Jones. And then I'm telling you guys, when he came into the interview room after getting picked, Malik Neighbors was not fired up at all. Like, it was like a puppy had walked into the room. Super quiet, super muted, no confidence, no aura. I asked him a layup Malik Neighbors, are you going to get 1,000 yards this season like your LSU wide receiver counterparts in their rookie season? And he said, I'm not sure. I'm just going to be a good teammate and do what's asked of me. Don't tell me that, dude. You're supposed to be a superstar wide receiver. Where the hell is the cockiness? Yes, I'm going to get 1,000 yards receiving. Yes, I'm going to be the next stud rookie wide receiver from LSU. I'm excited about being a New York Giant. That isn't what we heard. He just came like, and then he interviews later. He calls Daniel Jones Janiel Dones. I'm not getting excited about Malik Neighbors. Could it turn out? Yes. I think the potential is, of course, there. But I'm going to bet on Rome Odunze over him. I loved how Rome Odunze interviewed. I love the college production from Rome Odunze. I love the profile from Rome Odunze. And I love the landing spot. I made a bet with Seth Dewald yesterday in one of our meetings where I said, I think Rome Odunze doesn't finish any worse than wide receiver 2 on the Chicago Bears next season. I think that Rome Odunze outperforms either DJ Moore or Keenan Allen. I'm not sure who, and I know that I'm basically saying someone's going to get injured, but that's just how I feel. I don't think that the Chicago Bears spend a top 10 pick on Odunze if they don't want him to break out in their rookie season. I think they have plans for him, and I guarantee you guys here right now, we're already seeing the bear claw. Right? We're already seeing the bear claw with Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze. I think by July, we're going to hear about a secret handshake between Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze. We're going to hear about Rome Odunze and Caleb Williams going out to lunch and breakfast together. And we're going to talk about this friendship forming. Because if you'll remember going into this process, DJ Moore wanted Justin Fields, didn't want Caleb Williams, was kind of shitting on Caleb Williams. So that's probably putting, especially with a quarterback like Caleb Williams that we kind of talk about as a little bit of a teenager, I think that type of social stuff is going to play into production. And I really do think that Rome Odunze and Caleb Williams are going to form a bond throughout this process coming into the draft together. They're going to work together. They're going to they're going to go to dinner together. They're going to have a secret handshake. They're already doing the bear claw. I'm telling you guys now, draft Rome Odunze over Keenan Allen in best ball. I did that earlier today. Did my first best ball draft, and I really do think that Rome Odunze is going to break out in his rookie season. I'm calling it now. Rome Odunze breaks out his rookie season and doesn't finish any worse than wide receiver 2 on the Chicago Bears next season. And so I'm planting my flag on him as well. Again, love the profile, love the player, love the production. Love it all, really, when it comes to Rome Odunze. And I think that this guy's going to be a true superstar and stud. Again, interviewed great. Has the swag, had the aura, has the everything. Checks all the boxes to be a really, really good wide receiver in the NFL and is now paired with Caleb Williams. So I'm going to go with Rome Odunze over Malik Neighbors and bumping Malik Neighbors down, which then leads us to Xavier Worthy at number 9. It's just you've got to bet on that speed with that landing spot on the Kansas City Chiefs. They're definitely ecstatic about him, and he's going to have some insane weeks. Only 21 years old, really good college production at Texas as well, with the fastest 40-yard dash we've ever seen. This is a match made in heaven, and I think it's going to be very, very special. And so I'm very excited to draft him. Like, as you can kind of see, this tier 7 through 12 is kind of just the athletic tier. It's just some great players that, and then we kind of got to argue about the landing spots here. Wait, I did skip 11 on the rankings. That is so strange. I didn't even type them. Guys, I swear to you, you can look at this now. I see the comment. I did the format thing. Like I typed 1, 2, 3, 4 and then just dragged it down. Oh, I know what happened. I mixed it around. Hold on, let me fix that. I had Trey Benson a little higher and then I got cold feet. There you go. There's a little bit of a sneak peek there. 11 is back. So Xavier Worthy at number 9. Jonathan Brooks at number 10. I am putting Jonathan Brooks over Brock Bowers because I don't like the landing spot. I don't. I really, really don't. I know that Theo is really in on it, is still planting his flag on him. I think he has to. But I am not comfortable enough drafting Brock Bowers ahead of some of these players with that landing spot. I'm just not. Like, I say what you will about it. I can't get excited about it. I think Michael Mayer going into year 2 is still going to get some work. I think Devontae Adams is going to get a ton of targets. They drafted Dylan Laub, who I also think is going to get a ton of targets out of the backfield. Jacoby Myers is still there. And there's still potential that Hunter Renfrow even re-signs throughout this offseason. So I do not have the balls to draft Brock Bowers in really the first round, if I'm going to be honest with you, unless it's like a tight end premium league, unless you're really weak at tight end. But even then, I like Ben Sinnott's landing spot a lot, and I would probably rather spend a later draft capital on Sinnott and let someone else have Brock Bowers clog their roster. And I know that this is hard to say, clog roster when it comes to Brock Bowers, but we have seen now 2 years in a row, the consensus rookie tight end number one going into the draft does not break out at the NFL early. We had Kyle Pitts, he happened, but Trey McBride 2 years ago did not have a good rookie season, breaks out year two. And then this last year, we had Michael Mayer, right? He was the consensus rookie tight end one going into this, did not have a good rookie season, was outperformed by Dalton Kincaid and Sam Laporta. It is, and so I'm going with Brock Bowers at tight end 11, and that's going to be the end of the athleticism tier. I see a question here since I mentioned it. FF Bearded Print says, is it Sinnott or Sinnott? It is Sinnott. It is Sinnott. I talked to him at the Senior Bowl. Alex Dunlap confirmed it. It is Sinnott. I know everyone is out there saying Sinnott or Sinno, but I promise you it is Sinnott. Just saying. So anyway, that is kind of our top 11, right? We've got the quarterbacks who are definitely going to be starting, and then we've got some of these athletic freaks that are probably going to either be an athletic freak like Brock Bowers or start immediately like the other guys. Brock Bowers, we could maybe move down with Penix. I think that this is very, very close. I've got Michael Penix 12th. Again, guys, I love the landing spot for Michael Penix. I really do like it. I think that the Atlanta Falcons get their guy. We already talked about the Kirk Cousins contract is functionally 2 years, but he's coming off an Achilles injury, so there's tons of potential for Michael Penix to start earlier than expected. So I am totally okay using a first-round pick on Michael Penix, especially if you kind of already have your QB room. Maybe not figure it out, but just like you can figure it out. Like you're kind of halfway there. Like you've maybe got 1.5 good starters in SuperFlex. Yeah, I've got to go with Penix here. I think that at that point, when you're looking at Trey Benson, Keon Coleman, Brian Thomas, Ladd McConkey, you've really got to ask yourself, am I really going to pass up a quarterback for a backup running back and then potential wide receiver ones on a team? I don't think I had the balls to do it. I think I'm going to go with the probable QB1 eventually with the Atlanta Falcons, who's going to be spinning it to Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson behind a good offensive line with a good coordinator and head coach. So Michael Penix, I'm planting my flag on as well for first round draft capital in Superflex leagues, which leads us to number 13. We've got Trey Benson sitting there. I do think that Trey Benson is an awesome asset to get in Dynasty. I think Trey Benson's going to be a total stud. But I also am a believer in James Conner, and so I'm not going to be comfortable enough pulling the trigger on him over Penix. I think that there's going to be some opportunity to trade for Trey Benson either over the offseason or during the season while James Conner is still playing. Just because, again, I do think that the Cardinals want Trey Benson to be the bell cow, but they still got one more year on James Conner's contract. They'll be able to work in Trey Benson, catch him up to speed before totally letting him loose in 2025. So make no mistake, I want to acquire Trey Benson as much as I can. I'm just not comfortable enough pulling the trigger on him over Michael Penix yet, because because at this point, we're talking about backup players that have the potential and probability to start in the next coming seasons. And at that point in a Superflex league, I'm going to go with the quarterback, Michael Penix. But again, I love Trey Benson. I think it's awesome. And this is where we get to the interesting tier. I think we've got Keon Coleman, Brian Thomas, Ladd McConkey back to back to back. I'm putting Keon Coleman first because I'm starting to just love the content we're getting from him. We get the cookie interview. We hear he shops at Macy's and all of these other kind of funny things that he's doing. I really do like just him. And he got a really good landing spot in Buffalo. I mean, he's going to be the wide receiver one. They spent early draft capital on him, would have been a first round pick, but a couple teams got stupid and traded up for a different wide receiver, even though the Buffalo wanted Keon Coleman. And so I think it's a good pick by them. We are hearing that Josh Allen was asking for Keon Coleman as well. So when you hear that, you've got to draft him. You got to rank him highly. So I'm putting him over Thomas and Ladd McConkey, who both also have wide receiver one potential. I just think Keon Coleman's potential to be a wide receiver one is higher than the other two, even with Brian Thomas having better draft capital. And Brian Thomas, I do love. I do think that Brian Thomas is going to be the alpha in Jacksonville, at least by the end of the season. I don't think it's going to take him that long to do it. But there is still a lot of mouths to feed in this offense, and we have kind of learned over the last couple seasons that Trevor Lawrence doesn't necessarily lock onto one guy all the time. He does kind of spread it around. And so I am interested in Brian Thomas, but I think I would take Keon Coleman over him. But with Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, and now Zay Jones being released, I thought, which is pretty interesting. I see in the chat here. I'm just going to go with Mr. Thomas a little bit later, and then Ladd McConkey after him. And this is so tough for me. Again, guys, I didn't see much potential for Ladd McConkey in terms of a fantasy relevant player. I really did think that he was not going to be able to do too much. Like, I thought he would just be a guy that, maybe like Hunter Renfrow, where just gets the first down, sometimes gets some touchdowns. And of course, with that, you're going to have a high ceiling, but you're also going to have a pretty low floor sometimes. And it really just depends on the offense. But he goes to the Chargers. They spend really early draft capital on him. In fact, they trade up to get him after Buffalo passes on him. So they clearly wanted him, and he's clearly going to get a ton of volume from Justin Herbert. So I think Ladd McConkey is definitely a guy you've got to target in these drafts as well. And that's going to kind of be the end of the wide receiver super tier, almost, if you will. Because then I'm going to go with Jalen Wright at player number 17 over the other running backs that are technically handcuffs right now. Because I am, and you can turn into trade gods later this week. Me and Matty Q will be talking about this. I think that Jalen Wright is not a handcuff. I really do think that Jalen Wright is going to come into the Miami Dolphins and play, and probably play a lot. I mean, when you see a profile like that on a team like that, we kind of all expect that at some point he's going to get some carries and probably have some breakaway runs. And if injuries fall his way, then it's going to get even better. But Jalen Wright has the speed of all the wide receivers on the Miami Dolphins, but is just a bigger running back than all the Miami Dolphins running backs as well. So he should, in theory, have a bit more durability. I think that Jalen Wright and Devon Achane is going to be an awesome backfield going into 25. This year, of course, Raheem Mostert is there as well. But I think that Jalen Wright, Raheem Mostert, and Devon Achane are all going to be relevant this year. And I like the value that you can get with Jalen Wright right now. I'm going to kind of plant my flag on him as well. I think that he got the best landing spot out of all of this tier of running backs. Because, as you can see, I'm putting a little bit of a tier breaker. I'm putting Roman Wilson ahead of the other backup running backs, Blake Corum, Marshawn Lloyd, Kamani Vidal, because I, again, like the landing spot for Roman Wilson and the player a lot, going early in the third round, getting to replace Deontay Johnson, who's had some good seasons with Pittsburgh, has the great speed, great route running, great catching, great everything, really. I like Roman Wilson a lot, and so I am going to be taking him over Blake Corum, Marshawn Lloyd, and Kamani Vidal in my rookie drafts, just because I think he's going to be able to perform a bit earlier and probably maintain his value a bit better. Now, of course, Blake Corum, Marshawn Lloyd, Kamani Vidal all have a bit more ceiling, for sure. But there is something holding them back this season, although I almost want to move Kamani Vidal up. I like him a lot. But let's talk about this. So Blake Corum at number 19. It's more so because I do think that Kyren Williams is going to hold Blake Corum back early. I think it's going to take some time for Blake Corum to earn his spot on this offense. We know that the Los Angeles Rams do really like to just kind of focus on one running back and sometimes bring in a second one. But, this draft capital a little bit later in the third round, on top of having a hyper-productive Kyren Williams last season, I don't think they are crazy invested in Blake Corum in order to make him a bell cow right away. And so I think that with Blake Corum, again, kind of like I mentioned with a lot of these other running backs like Trey Benson, I think you're going to be able to get him a little bit later, or like in the season, right? Like week 4, trade for Blake Corum and just see what happens. He's, of course, a little bit more explosive than Kyren Williams and all that, but Kyren Williams did show us last year he knows how to play football, so it's hard to bet against that, in my opinion. Marshawn Lloyd is next. And I do like this landing spot a lot. I think he's going to be really special on the Green Bay Packers, especially going forward. So really all 3 of these running backs, Corum, Lloyd, and Vidal, I do want to acquire in some fashion. But Marshawn Lloyd, I think it will take a little bit longer to break out just because Josh Jacobs will truly hold him back for a little bit. I could see Marshawn Lloyd getting some pass catching work every once in a while, some change of pace. I do fully expect Lloyd to go ahead of A.J. Dillon on the depth chart. But I'm just not really sure what that means for fantasy. But we do know that Josh Jacobs' contract is functionally a 1-year deal, so there's a potential that Marshawn Lloyd is the bell cow going into 25. So I would be looking to acquire Marshawn Lloyd if I could. And then Kamani Vidal, I just love the prospect. I really do. And the landing spot. I think that by the end of the year, Kamani Vidal will be the starting running back for the Chargers. And I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes the year with more points than Gus Edwards, more points than J.K. Dobbins. I think Vidal is just special. And I know that it was 6th-round draft capital, but he's just a stud. And he's basically a more explosive Blake Corum who had massive success with Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. I think that he's going to handle the rock really, really well. And I think that they got their guy, even if it was late. We've seen 6th-round running backs do well at the NFL, a la Isaiah Pacheco. And Kamani Vidal's best comparable, Isaiah Pacheco. Let's go Vidal. Next up, we've got Troy Franklin at wide receiver, or not wide receiver, at player 22. And this is genuinely just because Bo Nix is his quarterback. It was tough for me, as you can kind of see. I've got a little bit of a tier breaker with Ben Sinnott next. But I talked about it yesterday. I really do believe Troy Franklin will lead the Denver Broncos in receptions next season. Or maybe receiving yards. Let's go with receiving yards. Troy Franklin leads the Broncos in receiving yards next season. I think that Bo Nix is easily going to lock onto him. When you put two teammates together from college to the next level, we've seen it before with Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts. I mean, those guys like those receivers. And I know that Cortland Sutton's there. I know Marvin Mims is there, but Sutton's kind of on his way out. And Marvin Mims was very, very rarely utilized last season. They use early 4th-round draft capital on Franklin, pairing him with his old teammate. I think that he's going to be utilized, and I think that Bo Nix is going to be looking at him a ton. Ben Sinnott is then next at 23 because, again, I love the landing spot and the prospect. Ben Sinnott crushed the combine, crushed the Senior Bowl, crushed college stats as well for a tight end. Pretty solid production at Kansas State, and young as well, only played 3 years. And that's pretty cool considering a lot of the players in this had the whole COVID years or some of these super seniors. He's not. He's a junior, came out early, and then gets 2nd-round draft capital onto the Commanders. He'll sit behind Zach Ertz until Ertz gets hurt, and then he'll be the starter with Jaden Daniels. And historically, these mobile quarterbacks have kind of locked on to their tight ends. And so I think that Ben Sinnott is going to be very, very special. I like Ben Sinnott a lot, guys. Like, I really, really do like him. And that's why I'm using him to break the tier between Troy Franklin, Xavier Legette, Ricky Pearsall, Javon Baker, Adonai Mitchell. Because these guys, there's just something off about every single one, whether it be landing spot, whether it be the profile, all of that stuff. Xavier Legette, I didn't like after the Senior Bowl. I didn't think he looked that good. It took forever for him to break out at the college level. And then he's going to the Panthers, who kind of already have a lot of mouths to feed now in that offense, especially after also getting Jatavian Sanders later, after also getting Jonathan Brooks earlier in the draft. It's a little tough to get too excited about Xavier Legette. I'm not going to lie. He's not a great separator. And I know he has the size, but it's not as big as people thought. When I laid my eyes on him, he's not as bulky as some would expect. So I'm not that in on Xavier Legette. I know he gets the 1st-round draft capital, but I'm not in on him too much. And I'm also not in on Ricky Pearsall that much either. This is another guy. Didn't really do too much at the college level. Took a while to break out. Gets the 1st-round draft capital after kind of impressing at the Senior Bowl. But I honestly didn't see what was so impressive about him at the Senior Bowl. He was fine. Like, he was good. I know he has really good hands, made some really great circus catches at Florida, but I don't like the landing spot in San Francisco. Even with the Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk trade, I still think that Jacob Cowing, who we'll talk about a little bit later, I think has some potential to get some volume in this offense too, just because of the type of player he is. So I really don't see much of a path of success for Ricky Pearsall. I think that this is going to be kind of a dead zone wide receiver for a very long time, just kind of floating around because of draft capital and potential. But I'm really not sure that he's going to get there. I don't see it unless they're trying to make him their cup. I don't know, but I'm not sure how they're going to utilize him right now. So I am definitely uncomfortable drafting him. In fact, I think I might take Javon Baker over him. I know that we're looking at some strange draft capital discrepancies here when you look at the draft position. But I am, again, planting my flag on Javon Baker over Jalen Polk. This dude's a stud, guys. I know it. I know it in my bones. Being able to talk to him, being able to watch him at the Senior Bowl, and then watch him interviews recently, talk about he's making people in wheelchairs stand up, all of this fun stuff. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. Javon Baker, I am latching myself onto. And Adonai Mitchell, I'm going to put over Jalen Polk too. This is interesting. It's close, right? I mean, obviously they go very close to each other, but I do think that Adonai Mitchell has very much potential to be the wide receiver 2 on this offense, not just beat out Alec Pierce, but I think he has some chance to beat out Josh Downs as well. He's going to be the field stretcher on this offense. And is pretty good. I mean, he's pretty good. We watched him dominate the combine. He has okay college stats from Texas. And this was a guy that a lot of us were thinking might go into the first round. I mean, I know he goes early second, so it's basically the same thing, but he gets a pretty solid landing spot with Indianapolis. I mean, Anthony Richardson has a cannon for an arm. So I think that Adonai Mitchell is someone I'm going to be trying to draft. I think he's taken a bit of a hit. So I like it a lot. I like it a lot. Adonai Mitchell in Indy is totally fine. I think he'll beat out Pierce, and I also think there's some potential to beat out Downs, which will put him just right behind Pittman in this offense, which is fine. Which then leads us to Jalen Polk at 28. This is, I mean, like, obviously he gets the high draft capital. I think he'll be good, and I do think it'll be Javon Baker and Jalen Polk kind of leading the way in New England. But I don't think he has the ceiling that Javon Baker does. I think this is more of a floor play, a guy who will pretty frequently get you like 5 to 6 points, and then you just hope he gets a touchdown sprinkled here or there. I don't see much ceiling for Polk like I do for Baker, so it's going to be hard for me to draft him. At 29, I've got Ray Davis because I love the landing spot. Ray Davis produced a ton in the SEC, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, really great story and a hard worker and all that stuff. So I think that he got one of the better landing spots out of this bunch of running backs: Ray Davis, Dylan Laub, Will Shipley, Isaac Guerendo, and Tyrone Tracy. So I'm putting Ray Davis at 29. Then I'm putting Dylan Laub next because, like Ray Davis, I think that Dylan Laub is going to get some snaps this year too. I think Ray Davis is going to score some touchdowns for the Bills. I think he's going to eat into James Cook's workload a pretty decent bit. And I think Dylan Laub is pretty much going to get all the pass catching work for the Las Vegas Raiders running back room. I don't think that Zamir White is really going to get many catches. I think it's going to all be Laub, and we've seen him do a really, really great job with that in college. So I think that that'll continue in the NFL, a true pass-catching running back. So give me Dylan Laub. And the other pass-catching running back is Will Shipley, but he didn't get as good of a landing spot. I don't think he's really going to have any opportunity to start unless Saquon Barkley gets an injury. Saquon Barkley can catch, he can run, he can block. So Will Shipley is not really going to be able to do too much. Now, if Saquon Barkley goes down, he will be a true stud. And so I do like him, and that's why I'm still ranking him ahead of some of these others that are also kind of handcuff running backs. But I don't think he has much potential to start right away. Isaac Guerendo, though, I do think has some potential to at least get some snaps, and then also has the contingent upside if there's a Christian McCaffrey injury. We talked about it yesterday. Isaac Guerendo, I think, has put the nail in the coffin for Elijah Mitchell. Isaac Guerendo is the handcuff to Christian McCaffrey. And with that explosiveness, 4.33 speed, Isaac Guerendo, I think, will smash in the San Francisco 49ers offense. I think it's a match made in heaven. Absolutely love the landing spot. So I'm not going to let him slip past me if I'm staring at him in this range. And Tyrone Tracy, this is another running back that's just an interesting prospect and gets a decent landing spot. Of course, they have Devin Singletary there, but he's not necessarily a bell cow running back. There is still room. There's still room for Tyrone Tracy in this offense behind Motor Singletary. And he's a wide receiver turned running back, which is someone who should be able to catch passes pretty well and should also be able to be pretty good at, just making some explosive plays. So I like Tyrone Tracy. I think he's a fun prospect. And so I think I'll be drafting him a little bit, not too much, but I think I'll be taking some Tyrone Tracy shares. Of course, has the really good workout metrics as well, on top of having some pretty good size because he was a wide receiver before running back. So I like the landing spot. I think he can catch some passes and all that stuff, which then leads us to this kind of wide receiver tier. I think that this is an interesting one. Devontae Walker at 35. Devontae Walker at 34. Sorry, Devontae Walker at 34. Again, guys, I know that he goes a little bit later than some of the guys I have in front of him, but I love the landing spot for Devontae Walker. The Baltimore Ravens field stretcher has had a ton of success at the NFL, and so I'm going to latch onto that. I know that he is going to have to work on his drop issues. I know that, but I think he can. We've heard drop issues with Jamar Chase, for example. The ball gets bigger when you're going from college to the NFL. The fact he's going to have a full offseason to work on it and gets to land in an offense who chucks the ball deep with Lamar Jackson hitting that field stretcher. We've seen success with Nelson Aguilar, Hollywood Brown, really anyone that's been thrown in that role. So I think Devontae Walker is going to be fine. Again, guys, he was separating at an unbelievable rate when I watched him at the Senior Bowl. Has some really solid stats at UNC with that connection with Drake May, was getting open deep. Really is a good field stretcher. I think he's going to be solid in Baltimore. And so I'm going to be drafting him because I think those spike weeks are going to entice a lot of people. And then I've got Luke McCaffrey next, Just because I don't think Luke McCaffrey is going to get as much volume as Devontae Walker will, at least year one. I do still view Luke McCaffrey as a little bit of a prospect. I will say getting the third round draft capital does kind of lay some of my concerns to rest. Because I did think he'd be a fourth, fifth round guy just because of the project. He is new to the wide receiver position. So that would hurt him a little bit in terms of the just getting better over time. But that just means he'll get better over time. And the fact he got third round draft capital by the Commanders, we'll just look at that and be like, you know what, we evaluated him and we don't think he's that much of a prospect. He produced really well at Rice last year. He was a quarterback before wide receiver, so he kind of understands all the ins and outs of route running and connection with the quarterback. So he'll probably be the slot guy here in Washington, which had a lot of production for Curtis Samuel last season. But again, I also really like Ben Sinnott. I still think Terry McLaurin's pretty good. And then there's also the potential that Jahan Dotson bounces back a bit. Austin Eckler is going to be catching some passes out of the backfield as well. So I don't think Luke McCaffrey is going to be asked to do too much right away. And so I like him. I'm going to be drafting him, but I think I'm going to take a dart throw on Devontae Walker's ceiling before I draft McCaffrey. Which then leads us to Malachi Corley, who I'm kind of burying. I don't think I'm going to draft him. But because of the draft capital, it felt weird putting him any lower. I think that this is a fair range, right behind Walker, right behind McCaffrey. Another guy who's going to play a role on an offense, but we're not quite sure what that volume is going to be. Of course, the high draft capital makes us think that the first pick in the third round makes us think that they will invest in him a little bit. But Garrett Wilson's still there. Mike Williams has been pretty good when healthy. Breece Hall catches a ton of passes. So I don't know yet when it comes to Malachi Corley. I do think he's a stud. He looked pretty solid at the Senior Bowl, and his college highlights are awesome, especially some of his screens and stuff. So if he's utilized properly, he should be pretty good. This is a Jets offense that I'm already uncomfortable investing in. I don't fully believe that Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to bounce back really, really well. And so I don't think that means the offense will be that good. Really, the only guy in the Jets that I'm latching myself onto is Breece Hall. I think he's going to get a ridiculous amount of dump offs from Aaron Rodgers, which could bode well for Malachi Corley because he's also a gadget player. But I just want to see it first before I'm comfortable using a pick in this range. I think I would take Walker or McCaffrey over him. And then Ja'Tavion Sanders is next at 37. This is my next tier break because I like the athleticism a little bit. Obviously didn't test as well as we wanted, but he is going to be the starting tight end for the Carolina Panthers. There isn't really anyone else in this room. And so that is opportunity for production, of course. And he's kind of a teammate with Jonathan Brooks. They get both the Texas guys. They really, really did surround Bryce Young with some help this year, even if it's not the help I wanted. Like, I'm not a big Leggett guy. I do like Jonathan Brooks, and I wish they maybe would have got like Sinnott instead of Sanders. I obviously Sinnott went earlier, but still, even Theo Johnson, I think, could have been cool. Someone who went a bit later. But Ja'Tavion Sanders going into this process was someone that we thought was the second best tight end. It ended up being Ben Sinnott and maybe Theo Johnson, arguably as well. But that's still some intangible stuff, and he's young at 21, right? Which is pretty young for a tight end. I think over time he's going to be awesome. And I just do like the landing spot. I do. I think that Bryce Young, of course, we saw last year at a couple games where he latched on to Hayden Hurst, Adam Thielen over the middle as well. So Ja'Tavion Sanders with his athleticism and size, I do think is a nice tier breaker right here. If you need a tight end, do it. And then if you don't need a tight end, then you can go with Brendan Rice, Ryan Flournoy, or Jalen McMillan. Guys, these are my flag plant players. I know Jalen McMillan has the third round draft capital, but I hate the landing spot in Tampa. I mean, it's Mike Evans, it's Chris Godwin, and I still think that Trey Palmer will probably be a bit better than Jalen McMillan in this offense next year. So I'm actually going to latch myself to the ceiling of Brendan Rice and Ryan Flournoy. And I know, we're going to do it. We're going to do it live on air. 38. Ryan Flournoy over Brendan Rice. Ryan Flournoy over Brendan Rice. Just a slightly better landing spot and slightly better draft capital. I think you've got to give it to Flournoy. Again, guys, this Dallas Cowboys landing spot is special for Ryan Flournoy. I didn't know where he would go. Didn't even think he would get drafted, but he gets drafted 2 rounds earlier than I thought he would on a really good team. So this was a guy I was already in on, even if he was going to be undrafted. So the fact he got drafted and went to a good team, I'm just going to go crazy for. I know that I'm probably wild for doing it, but Ryan Flournoy, rookie 38 in my rankings. Just a stud, guys. Love the story. Love the profile. The production's pretty solid as well with a great landing spot. Some serious potential to be the wide receiver 2 on this Dallas Cowboys team who throws at an unbelievable rate. And then Brendan Rice is next because, again, I think that the Chargers landing spot is still pretty solid. They got Ladd McConkey, obviously, but he's going to be in the inside. So there's still tons of opportunity for Brendan Rice to be the functional wide receiver 2 on the outside next to Josh Palmer, which is not bad at all, especially with Justin Herbert throwing the ball. Again, I still like Brendan Rice's profile. He did a good job at the combine. He looked really, really good at the Senior Bowl as well. I put him ahead of Ladd McConkey when I was doing my Senior Bowl wide receiver rankings. So I like Brendan Rice a lot. I know the draft capital isn't there, but I don't care. I don't care that the draft capital isn't there. I'm going to bet on the ceiling on Brendan Rice because of the landing spot, because of the profile over a landing spot like Jalen McMillan, who went in the 3rd round to a bad landing spot. And then just for posterity, I'll go ahead and scroll down for you guys to see the rest of my rankings just for funsies. Not really going to talk about it, but I'll scroll really slowly. As you can see, there are a couple standouts here. And as you can see, I'm still really low on Rattler. I'm putting Rattler in the same tier as Joe Milton, Jordan Travis, and Michael Pratt. They're all just backup quarterbacks. We're leaving it at that. And I mean, that's kind of the end of it. There are a couple players I made it. Cornelius Johnson, for example. This is just fun. He's been a Chargers fan his whole life and then gets to be reunited with Jim Harbaugh in Los Angeles. I think that that's kind of just cool. We'll see. So I bumped him up a little bit. And yeah, there we go. That's kind of the rest of it. That is it. Devin Leary, have him. I know I've been kind of a quarterback guy this whole time, but Tyler Huntley, I believe, is still there unless I missed something. So yeah, Jermaine Burton is pretty low. He says that's just, I don't like the prospect too much. I really don't. Maybe here's what we'll do. We'll move him ahead of Jalen McMillan. We'll make him number 40. But we still need, right? We still need one of the wide receivers to get moved. And I still like Andre Yosevich and I still like Charlie Jones. So I don't know. I think he'll be fine. But I do think if T. Higgins leaves, then Jamar Chase is going to be the stud here. So we're going with Jermaine Burton, just a little lower than some. I'm just not that big of a fan of him. Oh, and thank you, Rubio. Huntley is in Cleveland. That makes sense. Damn, so they got Deshaun Watson, Jameis Winston, and Tyler Huntley. Oops. Well, then we can bump him up a little bit. But either way, those are my rookie rankings. And I see that someone says there's not a lot of analysis here. I think of analysis, especially yesterday, talking about rookies and everything. Trust me, analysis went into this, but just to quickly kind of talk about the rankings, I just kind of explained my thought process. But trust me, my analysis and everything I did for my prospect evaluation went into these rankings. It's not just feelings. It is feelings combined with some analysis. So anyway, I think that these are fun, and I'm excited to see how it pans out by the end of the season. Let's see if we have any questions in the chat. I'll check Instagram first. None on Instagram. YouTube. Let's see. Yosevich in the slot this year. Maybe, although I think it would be Charlie Jones, right? I think. Late rookie picks are worthless. Maybe. But there's always someone that you can get late in rookie drafts that pans out. Tank Dell, Puka Nacua, Brock Purdy, Isaiah Pacheco. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. So that's why we're here, right? That's why we're here. You cool with taking Sinnott with a late second in a Superflex tight end premium? Yes. If he's still there, I think you do it. I don't feel like Pearsall has a path to success if Ayuk gets traded. He has a lot of similarities. I mean, it's not that I don't think he has a path to success. It's just I already don't necessarily like the San Francisco. Like I'm not a big Ayuk guy already, just because you don't necessarily know when to start him. I mean, any which week it could be a Christian McCaffrey week, a George Kittle week, a Deebo Samuel, or Brandon Ayuk week, and I don't think that'll necessarily change with Ricky Pearsall. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll have some weeks, but I think he'll also have some down weeks. And I also don't know if he'll necessarily be the guy to slot in and take all of Ayuk's workload. I still think that Kittle, Samuel, and Christian McCaffrey would get a lot more volume than he would. And I am a Jacob Cowing guy. I really do like Jacob Cowing as a prospect. They get him later in the draft as well. Was that fourth round that they ended up getting him, which isn't too late? Yeah, fourth round for Jacob Cowing. I know that it's a couple or 3 rounds later. But still, when it comes to players, like, I mean, Jacob Cowing, his college production kind of makes Ricky Pearsall's college production look minuscule compared to Jacob Cowing's. I mean, Jacob Cowing had more college production than any wide receiver in this draft class. So I like Cowing a lot. I think he's going to be special. So yeah. What do I think about taking CD and a 25 second for 101 and Addison? My only QB in Superflex is Bryce. I guess it's not too bad. A 25 second isn't terrible. You can wait. I mean, I guess see if you could maybe just give CD and not the 25 second, but if not, I think that this is fine. Would I trade Minshew in a 24 fourth for Roman Wilson? If it's a Superflex league, no, I would not. I wouldn't trade Minshew for Roman Wilson. Minshew is one of my guys. I can't explain it. I love Gardner Minshew. Every time we watched him play, what has he done? Produced. He takes a Colts team that should have sucked last year without Anthony Richardson and almost leads them to the playoffs. What does he do when he's the Philadelphia Eagles backup and comes in? Wins a few games. What does he do in Jacksonville? Unfairly gets kicked out after making Jacksonville a decent team, like an okay team, winning some games when they're not expected to win any. I like Gardner Minshew. He's going to be throwing the ball to Devontae Adams, Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, Jacoby Myers, Amir White, Dylan Laub. I mean, I think I want the quarterback here. I had last year Gardner Minshew was like my quarterback 5 in a Superflex league, and I still wouldn't trade him to QB needy teams. Like I really do believe in Minshew. I think the Raiders believe in him too. They gave him a 2-year contract. I don't think Aiden O'Connell is starting. It's going to be Minshew. I think you hold on to him and you enjoy it, Jamie. I think you just do. But yeah. I think that's it, guys. I think that's it. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This was another fun episode of Wake and Take, and you guys were a great audience as always. Make sure if you can't catch all the shows live, you subscribe to the Wake and Take podcast. The link to that is found in the description. And of course, if you can tune in live, I will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern on the Player Profiler, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You guys have a terrific Tuesday and a wonderful rest of your week. Peace.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.